Howie Roseman never stops, my friend. While everyone's eyes are on the big stories of this Eagles offseason, the A.J. Brown trade, the future of Jalen Hurts, the arrival of Mekhi Lemon, there is another kind of work happening in silence behind the scenes at the Jefferson Health Training Complex. Work that Roseman does every summer, without a spotlight, without a headline. But that defines the difference between a good roster and a championship roster. Today, I am going to show you 5 Eagles players who may be on their way out in trades before the start of the 2026 season. And when you understand the reasoning behind each move, you will understand exactly why the Eagles continue to be the most efficient organization in the NFC when it comes to roster management. I am going to break down who these 5 players are, what Roseman's logic is behind each possible departure, and what the Eagles' recent history with this type of move tells us about the summer ahead. But first, if you are a true Eagles fan, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel right now, because Philadelphia's summer moves arrive without warning, and I never let any of them slip by. Let's get into it. Reporter John McMullen, who covers the Eagles for Sports Illustrated and has direct access to the organization, published a detailed analysis today identifying 5 players on Philadelphia's roster who profile as trade candidates this summer. McMullen opens with a point that is fundamental to understanding everything that follows. The Eagles are not trying to move players who have failed. The problem is exactly the opposite. Roseman has built enough depth that certain players who on any other NFL roster would be starters or meaningful contributors, have become surplus. And Roseman's track record shows exactly what he does when he has surplus. Last August, he flipped defensive tackle Thomas Booker to the Las Vegas Raiders in exchange for cornerback Jakorian Bennett, a move nobody saw coming that generated real value on both sides. Before that, in March of 2025, he signed tight end Harrison Bryant for $2 million. It looked like a simple depth signing. But when the roster got tight that summer, Roseman traded Bryant to the Houston Texans, receiving receiver John Mechie and draft positioning in return. 2 under-the-radar moves that nobody was paying attention to, and that contributed directly to building the Super Bowl championship roster. The summer of 2026 should follow the same script, and McMullen identified the 5 players most likely to star in that kind of move. The first is Andy Dalton. The veteran 38-year-old quarterback was acquired from the Carolina Panthers in March for a 2027 7th-round pick, with the Panthers retaining part of his salary, generating approximately $2 million in cap space savings for the Eagles. Dalton is entering his 16th NFL season. To put that in context, 16 seasons in the league is a career that very few quarterbacks ever achieve, and it speaks volumes about Dalton's longevity and professional consistency as an athlete. On the current Eagles roster, he sits behind Jalen Hurts and Tanner McKee in the quarterback hierarchy, with developmental quarterback Cole Payton also competing for a spot. Roseman said publicly that he is comfortable keeping 4 quarterbacks if needed, but the market can change that calculation very quickly. The 2026 season has not yet begun, and the preseason is historically the period when the most injuries occur in the NFL. If any rebuilding team suffers a serious injury to its starting quarterback during that window, Dalton immediately becomes the most sought-after asset on the market. An experienced quarterback with 16 years in the NFL, capable of stepping into a system and playing competent professional football from day one. Roseman will answer that phone call, and instead of simply releasing Dalton and receiving nothing in return, he will extract a draft pick or a player from that negotiation. The next 2 candidates go together: cornerbacks Kelee Ringo and Jakorian Bennett. The 2 entered the 23 draft just 1 pick apart. Bennett went 104th overall, Ringo went 105th. Both have above-average speed. Both have real upside as coverage defenders. And until the start of this offseason, both had a legitimate role and a future within the Eagles program. But the 2026 offseason completely changed that scenario. The arrivals of Rick Woolen and Jonathan Jones in free agency created a cornerback room that McMullen describes as potentially the best trio of defensive backs in the NFL, alongside All-Pros Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. With Woolen and Jones added, and with Mitchell and DeJean operating at the elite level they have reached, there is simply no physical space on the roster to accommodate both Ringo and Bennett in a way that makes financial and strategic sense for the organization. The 2 cases have important differences that determine who goes first. Bennett has an injury history that concerns any front office evaluating his availability, and that vulnerability reduces both his market value and the Eagles' willingness to keep him in a position where they need certainty. Ringo, on the other hand, at just 23 years old, has something Bennett does not have to the same degree: prototypical length, elite athleticism, and an active role as one of Michael Clay's top gunners on special teams. Those attributes make Ringo a more valuable asset for a team willing to bet on his development, and potentially the candidate who will return a better package in a trade than Bennett. McMullen is direct. There appears to be no room left at the inn for either of them. The question is not whether one of them leaves, but when and in exchange for what. The fourth candidate is tight end Grant Calcaterra, and this is one of the most interesting stories on the Eagles roster right now. Calcaterra re-signed with Philadelphia in March on a one-year, $2 million deal, a modest raise from his previous contract that appeared to position him as part of the 2026 plan. The design was simple and efficient. Dallas Goedert as the primary receiving tight end, veteran Johnny Munt as the specialized blocker, and Calcaterra filling the receiving role in 12 personnel. The two tight end alignment the Eagles use frequently in Sean Mannion's system. That plan was completely disrupted by the 2026 draft. The Eagles selected Eli Stowers at the 54th overall pick, a tight end with first-round talent who fell for reasons that Philadelphia's scouts clearly did not share with the rest of the league. The arrival of Stowers, plus undrafted tight end Daquan Wright out of Ole Miss, who is also in camp, turns Calcaterra into the fourth tight end on a roster that will likely carry 3 at the position in Week 1. McMullen is explicit in the comparison. This is exactly what happened with Harrison Bryant. Bryant signed for $2 million in March of 2025, appeared to be part of the plan, and was traded that same summer when the numbers made the situation unsustainable. Calcaterra's script in 2026 looks identical. The fifth and final candidate is Byron Young, and this is the name that surprises the most, because we are talking about a player who delivered. Young was claimed off waivers from the Las Vegas Raiders in 2024 and did not just survive on the roster. He built a solid and consistent role in the Eagles' defensive line rotation throughout the 2025 season. 37 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 17 games played. Those are real numbers produced with consistency by a defensive tackle with excellent cost-to-value ratio. Young's problem is not his performance. It is the company he keeps. The Eagles have Jalen Carter, one of the most dominant defensive tackles in the NFL, Jordan Davis, and Moro Ojomo locking down the interior of the defensive line. And beyond that elite trio, Ty Robinson is entering his second year ready to take on a larger role. The equation became simple. With 5 defensive tackles of real value competing for 4 spots or fewer, someone has to go. And Young, as the player with the least historical ties to the program and with the highest relative market value compared to his current cost, is the most logical candidate. McMullen uses the same analogy that applied to Booker in the summer of 2025. Sometimes you have to give up something that works to get something you need more. Young will generate a trade that benefits the Eagles somewhere else on the roster. What unites these 5 candidates is Howie Roseman's central and non-negotiable philosophy. No player is untouchable if the value equation makes sense, and the best way to maintain an elite roster is to never stop refining the margins. The Eagles are not moving on from these players because they failed. They are opening this possibility because they succeeded too well in building depth around them. That is the kind of organizational problem that 90% of NFL franchises would love to have. The question that remains for Eagles fans: which of these 5 do you think gets traded first? Does Dalton end up on a rebuilding team before Week 1? Does Calcaterra become the Harrison Bryant of 2026? And does Byron Young return a surprise asset for the Eagles? Leave your take in the comments. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I'll be back later with the latest Eagles news. Fly, Eagles, fly.